So if we get back to the discussion about what's real spirituality, can you see that to me real spirituality is very practical? See, I find in the world today that people are becoming more and more addicted to the mysterious. Have you noticed that? Anything that's mystery is fascinating. And they'll even fancify the fascinating. Like, in other words, they make it so, like, I was listening last night to a television, I just turned on the television for 5 minutes last night. A show was about the Bermuda Triangle. You've heard of that location on the Earth? Where there's seemingly a lot of mysterious things that have happened. And the man, instead of just saying, oh, this mysterious thing happened, or that mysterious thing's happened, or that mysterious thing's happened, this is what he was doing instead. This very big mystery has happened. And this, there was this. The whole mood wasn't one of the discovery of truth, but the addiction to the mystery. Wanting to have the feeling of the mystery in amongst the presentation. You see, I feel that is what fancifies things. And unfortunately, when we fancify things, we automatically, I feel, create resistance to one of these things.
But there is a saying also that God's ways are mysterious.
Yeah, I don't believe that either.
No.
I don't believe God's mysterious. Yeah, there is a big saying like that. And I feel that there is this deep beliefs in the human race that God is mysterious, so therefore everything is mysterious, so therefore we'll never find out really the truth about anything. So what's the point of even looking? That's where we even go with that.
When you communicate or ask questions, could you please speak louder so we could be reading?
Sure, yeah, good comment. So if we can speak loud, if we're up the front and asking questions, speak loud enough for the people down the back to hear it. So the question was, or the statement was?
God's ways are mysterious.
Yes, yeah. So there's this belief in the world that God's ways are all mysterious. And I don't agree with such a thing at all. Yep. Simon, thank you.
Yeah, and as well as that we should not know.
We should not know.
Know about truth and about.
Yes.
And it's not logical.
Yes. How many of you have heard of this doctrine in Christianity called the Trinity? Yeah? Any of you have heard of that? Yeah? Most of you? It's a conundrum, isn't it? To understand. And in fact, that's one reason why they created the doctrine. So that it would be a conundrum to understand, and so that thousands of theses could be written about it, and still nobody really understand it. But we could then say that God is mysterious, and all of God's ways are mysterious, and so we don't really have to understand it, we have to have faith in it. Now I put to you that faith is not understanding the what's the word I'm looking for? The non-understandable. Does that make sense? To me, faith comes from proof, evidence. To have faith in something, you've got to have some kind of evidence that such a thing exists or is able to exist. Do you follow me? Now, to me, teachings that are illogical are definitely never true. Because logic is something that God gave us in our mind to utilise and use. It does not make sense that we have to throw out logic to understand something. Right? That does not make sense at all. And in fact, if you think of every scientific discovery we've ever made, there is always logic in it, somewhere. So to me that indicates that if there's no logic in a spiritual form of discussion or a spiritual idea or a belief system, then it's most probably not true. There needs to be logic involved with it. Yeah? So, and this quality of faith, I feel that it is an important quality, but we need to have it based on what I would classify as evidence. Can I give you an example? A couple of 100 years ago, And for many of the 1,000 years before then, mankind knew that flight was possible. Now, how did they know? Because birds could do it. That's how we knew that it must be possible. And for many thousands of years, people have tried to discover how this flight thing could be possible. Yes? And so they come up with all different theories, some of which they try to scientifically put into action. And of course, many people died through this process because their ways of doing it didn't work so well, didn't operate well. But there was still evidence that flight was possible. Can you see? And so that kept humanity keeping on searching for the truth about flight. Yes? So they kept on searching the truth about flight. So there's evidence present. Now, because the evidence was present, and man kept searching for the truth, and they were humble enough to see their mistakes, so that they try one thing, strapping a few feathers to the arms and flap, 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 and crash. I'm humble to the fact that that didn't work. Now, right, I know that didn't work. I'm humble enough to accept my mistakes. Now I have the ability to discover more truth. And eventually we get to a point where somebody discovers this, or probably drawn more accurately, this, yes, a shape that we now have in every aeroplane that we fly on every day. And in that process they discovered something. They discovered that if you push that forward, right, what happens is the air flows, and the air flows there, and the air over the top expands, so it gets thinner, whereas the air underneath compresses or stays the same. That's what they found. This is the discovery of what you now know as aerodynamics. Yes? So in this process they realised that that then created what was called lift. Yes? Now the very first people who understood that properly could now build something that actually could fly. And all they had to worry about was trying to get the thing to move forward. Now initially they tried getting the thing to move forward by jumping off of a hill. And it moved forward. It only moved forward until they hit the bottom of the hill. And then of course we had a problem. So what they decided then was to add the motor and a propeller to the entire design. And that then created forward movement, which then created lift enough to get off the ground. Yes? Okay. Now I put to you that discovery of those truths required humility on the part of every single person involved with the discovery of that truth. They had to be willing to experiment, they had to be willing to change their ideas, they had to be willing to grow. It required at the end to accept that there was an absolute truth about flight. The absolute truth was the law of aerodynamics. That was the absolute truth about flight. Now, I also feel that there are many other truths about levitation and movement of other things that we're yet to discover. But we've discovered this one, the truth about flight, which is all about the law of aerodynamics. And we call it the law of aerodynamics because it's a fixed truth. It's an absolute truth. Yeah? You know the law of gravity. That's also an absolute truth. There's a gravitational pull upon each one of us that if it didn't exist, we'd all be out in the universe very rapidly, yes? The Earth is spinning at about 1800 or whatever it is kilometres per hour, and if we had no gravity, at 1800 kilometres an hour we'd be flung out into space. Yeah? But gravity keeps us here. Again, we discovered we were in the truth, but eventually it was discovered, this truth. It was a discovery of the law that was involved. So every truth I feel, has a law associated with it. There are physical laws, there are spiritual laws, there are soul-based laws. They're all laws that are associated with the truth. So, what I was getting at was that there is evidence associated with the discovery that we could have faith that flight existed. We had faith because we could see birds flying. That caused us to have faith, and that faith caused many, many people to be involved in the discovery of this law, the law of aerodynamics which creates lift. Yes? So faith is a very, very important quality to develop, to actually grow and change. For us as a human race, to grow and change, we need faith. But we need to have evidence that it's worth having faith in a certain direction. You see? It's no good having faith in something that is illogical and there's no evidence to support its existence. It's pointless having faith in that. And this is where I feel many spiritual paths go astray. We put our faith in things that there is no firm evidence for. And this is where we cause ourselves a lot of pain, because we start believing things with there being no evidence, or little evidence.
But to have faith, you have to have the understanding also.
To have faith, you have to have some understanding. I agree. Yeah, I agree totally. So, for instance, we had faith in flight because we could actually see birds flying, so we knew that they were capable of flying somehow. We just had to discover how. Now, initially, the people who started investigating thought that they were lighter than air. But that's not true, we found out. You start weighing a bird, you realise that it's not lighter than air, it's heavier than air. So after a while we started getting rid of the theories, and we ended up with the truth. By investigation. But we need to certainly come to an understanding, very important part of gaining evidence. Yeah. Okay. So, my suggestion is, any form of spirituality, any form of investigation that causes you to attempt to believe the unbelievable, the illogical, can't probably be associated with truth. But we've got to be careful, because sometimes what we think is illogical is not illogical. So we've still got to be humble and open.